Hello, everyone, and welcome back to season 6 of the MRX Lab, the show from FlexMR, where this year we're on a mission to uncover the value created by the brilliant people in our industry and how they bring that value into their organizations. So today I'm joined by Mayra Munguia, Insight Manager at BT Group. Welcome, Mayra.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's okay. So, Mayra, I want to start off and basically flip it over to you just to introduce yourself to the audience, a bit about you and your background within research.
Yeah, so I work in BT Group and I've done so for the past 5 years almost. I started my career in research a long time ago now. I think I started back when I was living in Mexico, and one of my topics in university was market research. So we had one of the professors that had an agency at the end of kind of like the lecture, and at the end of that course he invited me over to work with him, and I think I just fell in love with it. And I was still in university, so I started really really young. And then after working there for a long time, we had to move to England, and then I started working in an agency. And for a few years after that, I just moved to client side because it seemed a bit more stable, and I know that agencies have a bit more fun. So I do miss that a little bit. But yeah, this is it. I've been working in BT Group for the past 5 years. I started there as an analyst, and now I'm an insight manager. I mainly cover the consumer side of things. I used to oversee business for a little bit, and then I just moved to consumer to try to explore like another market.
Brilliant. And are you enjoying client side a bit more?
The challenges are quite different though. I really like
Mm,
it because I think it's a bit more steady, and I think it's good when you have kids and when you have a family. And when I used to be in the agency, I might travel a bit more, and it was flights, and it was like airports
yeah,
all over the place, and all of the fun of being in an agency. But now when you settle and you have kids, you don't want to travel as much. So I decided to make the jump. I enjoy it massively. I really like my team, and I really like working with other people, and the culture that EE has, for instance, in the consumer side, where everyone is just mega relaxed, and they understand why insights are valuable, and they understand what you're trying to tell them. And it's almost not about convincing them that, this is the insight. They already know that that's the insight, and they just want your opinion. So that's amazing.
yeah. And I guess moving on to the topic of today's episode, which is taking a look at the journey of women within market research. Um, I wanted to start off by getting a sense of your journey as a woman in research, Myra. What's your journey been like in that sense?
Well, I don't want to piss people off. So all of the things that I'm going to
Mhm.
be saying are from my perspective. Let's keep in
Absolutely.
mind that I'm not, I'm not British. I have a different culture. I'm not, I'm a minority, and this is all coming from my side. Um, I think as a woman working in research, I've encountered loads of really good experiences, and I've encountered people being really open, and especially in this market, I feel like most of the times we just don't encounter any issues because people are really nice, and they don't care if you're a man or a woman to be able to do stuff. However, on the flip side, I have noticed that when you're having difficult conversations with stakeholders, or when you're doing a debrief that perhaps is not showing what they would like to show, um, the conversation turns almost quite difficult, and some stakeholders don't take it as well as when a man is doing exactly the same debrief. I'm not sure if it's because it could be that from my point of view, maybe I'm a bit insecure, or maybe I'm showing some of that, which I hope not. I don't think so. But I think all of those things might play a little bit in the game. Um, on my side, when I first started working in BT back when I was an analyst, I think most of the team were men. We have been making a really good progress on that sense. And now I think we're like a healthy split of half and half, which is really good. However, I never felt like because I was a woman, I was being treated differently or anything like that in the company. That has never happened. Just feel like when you're giving the news, it's just taking a bit differently. It's like they are trying to attack the insights a bit more. They are trying to attack what you're saying and your character when you're presenting. Um, and I don't see that happening as much with men.
Hmm. And I guess touching on that point of your anecdotal story, and when you are having those tough conversations and even reporting back your insights, how does that affect your confidence when you feel like those conversations are more difficult, potentially because you're a woman giving the talk?
Well, I think part of why the confidence or the lack of confidence is there is because in the beginning I didn't expect any of those things to happen. I was just like showing up and showing the debriefs and showing the things, and then you start to see how people get a bit defensive, and it's a bit of a sensitive topic for some of them, which I
Mm,
understand. It's not easy news to go to a team and say this product that you have been working so hard on is not performing quite as well, or is not doing what you want to do, or customers don't like this bed. It's a difficult conversation. I think it is quite difficult on the confidence that you have, and at the same time the way that I've tried to tackle it is just be double prepared. And before you go into a debrief, you have to absolutely close every single gap that you have and have more confidence on what you're presenting, and triple check absolutely everything and make sure that everything from volume questions all the way to market questions will be covered, because I feel like that's the only way that you will have a bit more credibility. I do feel like women sometimes struggle with the same level of credibility as men. I'm not sure if this is something that will happen in other uh, you know, in other fields, not only in market research. I'm not sure how finance people are managing it. I'm not sure if they are being questioned as much or not. But it's definitely something that is there. It's not, I don't think this will come as a surprise to all of my colleagues, because I've always raised it and I've always been really vocal about it. And in some instances, when I know that, a conversation is going to get hard, I even try to get a colleague, like a male colleague, in the same meeting, not even to say anything, just for them to actually witness that some stakeholders will treat me different that they will treat them. Does that
mm.
make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Um, yeah, and I think another point you touched on as well was when you first started, you were in a male-dominated team, especially within research. I wanted to build on that a little bit with some of the studies that I found. So, firstly, one posted by Clerks Media it suggested about 55% of market researchers were female or identified as female. But on the flip side, in another study, out of the top 40 insight companies, only one had a female CEO. So that sort of, to me, presents another challenge, which is market research is attracting women, but there seems to be a problem in moving them onto leadership. And I just wonder if you had an opinion on what the barriers that are facing women in that sense. Maybe it's the credibility, like you touched on.
I I think there is it's a whole topic, isn't it? Because
Mm,
it's only we will need to take a look at it from all the different perspectives. From my perspective of being a mom of three and being married, I do understand that it's quite difficult to go to leadership, because at the end of the day, as a person, you will always prioritize your family and you will always prioritize what you're doing with them, and you want to see your kids grow up and you want to be there. So to be able to be in leadership, you have to be able to put the work, put the time, um, spend some you know time having difficult conversations. I know and I'm aware of multiple people, colleagues of mine, that the moment that they had kids, they just decided that it was better for them to maybe go part-time or maybe completely have a break in their careers, and then they took over again a few years when their kids were older. And I think that's definitely playing a role into why is it so difficult to have women in leadership. um, Obviously this is not about saying all of these people and all of, we're not just making assumptions, or we're not saying absolutely everyone that is in market research is doing that. I'm just
Mm.
pointing out of the observations that I've had over time, and from my perspective, my colleagues perspective, and what I've seen in my career, right? So I think that that definitely plays a role. It's quite difficult, and I think the fact that in the back of your mind you have all of the things that perhaps you need to do, or perhaps you need to organize or get together and put together for the kids, is also like a space of mind that is occupying
Mm.
um, something that perhaps men don't have as often. And
Yeah.
so that definitely plays a part. The whole confidence levels, I'm not sure. Again, it might just be me, and it might be me struggling. It would be good to maybe have another perspective from another female. I know that from my colleagues and my close friends, I'm not the only one struggling with that, and it takes a really strong woman to be able to progress in their careers. Most of the time, we just want to get on and work and do what we want, and if we don't progress, that's it, right? Others,
Mm.
you know we might think, I want to keep doing it and I want to be able to do all of this, and it's really hard work, and it will take loads of partnership with your husband or your close family to be able to do all of that. Because if we take a look into this whole thing, even picking up the kids from school, right? The kids go out of school at what time? Like, I don't know, quarter past 3 or 3 p.m. or whatever. That's literally the middle of the day for us,
Mm.
and for us to be able to do things, right? And I think you are dragging this gap, this financial gap, from the beginning. So when the decision is made as a family on who will have to sacrifice that bit to be able to be with the kids and pick them up and drop them up and do the whole thing, is usually the women, and that's because usually we earn a bit less than men. So when you think about it, you
Mm.
say, well, from my point of view, it would better if I do it, because I know that maybe I don't earn as much as you do, so I'll do it this way. I know that I'm not the only one that takes a look at it that way. Like, there are other families
Mm.
that say, well, I'm not the one that is earning the most in the family, therefore I try to be flexible about it, and I try to go and pick the kids up and drop the kids off. There are not loads of companies that are flexible with saying it's okay if you go and pick your kid up. I mean, it's 5 minutes down the road. There are other companies that you have to be there the entire time, right? And that's also
Mm.
a part of why you kind of like get behind a little bit. All of these different challenges that you have as a woman is part of why it's so difficult to go to leadership. And
Mm.
the flip side of that is also when you're a mom, you just feel guilty about loads of things. Am I doing this right? Am I not doing this right? Other moms might judge you, and other moms might be saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe she went back to work after X amount of time, or I can't believe that you know the kid is, I don't know, wearing the shoe on the wrong side, and all of these things that
Yeah.
happens with kids, and you get a bit more harshly judged when you work. From
Mm.
my side and my point of view, because I did feel like that, and I did like feel other moms will put pressure on me because I was working and at the same time raising kids. And I decided to just mix with the right people and have like a really strong network, and just in my little circle, it's me and other moms that work, and I know that they are never going to judge, they are never going to say anything. I know that you can drop them a message and say, I forgot about this. Is someone has like a spare one, or to someone can help or whatever, and they are going to be there. But I also understand that there's more people that might not be able to build a network like that. And all of these little things just make going into leadership way harder.
And
Um, you don't,
I think you sorry to
no, go on.
interrupt.
No, no, no.
You touched on a really good point there about the relationship between you and your family, and it being a joint decision, etc., being a barrier going into leadership. But I think you touched on something really interesting with the relationship with your employer as well. Obviously, moving into leadership, it requires more of your time, and being flexible isn't always an option. But I think it's also on the employer in some respects to have that flexibility for you and understanding. But in some ways, that can just come down to luck, can't it?
Absolutely. And I am really, really conscious that I'm mega lucky in the company that I am at. Because my boss, he will never say, you can't go and do this, you can't go and do that. His way of viewing things is, as long as everything is working as it should be, as long as things are being delivered when they should be, and as long as you're happy, I'm happy. So you never get questions about, or I never have to call and say this has happened, or I need to take the kid to the doctor's appointment and it's going to be half an hour. Because I've called him before, and I grab the phone and say this has happened, I need to pop out for half an hour, and he will literally say, I don't care, you do whatever you
Mm,
think is necessary, and I'll and
yeah,
I'll and I'll see you when I see you. You have that
yeah.
liberty of making the decisions because the company trusts you. And I think that also builds a bond of, you are really loyal and you are really into, I might be popping out now for half an hour, but that means that if something needs to go out on a Friday at 6 p.m. because something happened or somebody has a question at that time, I don't even hesitate. You just do it because you know that
Mm,
it's a two-way street. So
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, I guess pivoting onto another issue, which you kind of touched on there as well, was the gender pay gap. So there was a study that found within marketing and market research that there's a 16% pay gap. For reference, the ONS released their data for 2024, and the average gender pay gap between full-time workers was 7%, and for all employees, it was 13%. So that there is a bit of a gap, especially in market research, above the average. What do you make of that?
I think it from my perspective is really annoying because we're doing exactly the same job. We are
Mm,
maybe adding a different perspective, and I'm not saying one perspective is better than the other one. I think we're all a team and we're supposed to bring different aspects and different views for everything. But if we're doing exactly the same job, and if we're both doing a good job, I just don't understand why will there be a pay gap. The only reason that I
mm,
can think of, and it happened to me, was when I took, you know, a 2-year maternity leave, and therefore I fell into the whole cracks and I lost loads of opportunities. And during that time,
mm,
obviously, you don't get a pay rise, and then start like things start to drag on. That happened to me when I
mm,
was on the agency side, and you know you're not working, you're not showcasing your work, therefore you're losing on those opportunities that might come along. When I moved to client side, it was really funny because I was on a maternity leave, and I remember my boss then calling me and saying, I'm not sure what you're doing, but you need to come and join this meeting that is going to happen in 10 minutes. And I was like, with a baby, right? And I was like, well, what's
yeah,
going
yeah.
on? And he went, bring the baby, just don't put your camera on, but you need to be in this meeting. And I thought, well, this is so weird because they've never done that. So I went, joined the
Mm,
meeting, and it was a meeting about new roles and new opportunities in the business and in other teams and how they were going to release new things. And I thought that's so cool, man, because I would
Mm,
never know about it. Nobody would have told me about it if I didn't get that call of this is happening. And I applied for a role when I was on maternity leave, and I got the role when I was on maternity leave. And I think those little bits that sometimes when you're a manager, you really don't think about it, or not loads of
yeah.
people will do, right? But it does
Mm,
change somebody's life pretty much, because you go from being
absolutely.
an analyst to being a manager. You now have more opportunities, and they are really open, and it just changes. And I think those little things are not something that companies do as often, which
Mm,
they should. I feel like you're taking maternity leave, and most of them just forget about you, and of you go, and I'll see you in a year time. And it
mm,
shouldn't work that way, because you've worked so hard to try to show what you can do and try to show your abilities, your skills, and all of the things that you can bring to the table. And it's just not like you're not a person anymore because you're taking a year off. By the way, raising a person, you're not taking a day off just going on
absolutely. Yeah.
holiday. You're
Yeah.
bringing a kid
Yeah.
into the world. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. I think that comes back to something I was saying before about the relationship with your employer in a lot of ways. You know, you mentioned
yeah,
just a great story of um, them seeing you as a human being and accepting that and appreciating the situation you're in, and that, you know, a lot of people go through. So it shouldn't be something that is a disadvantage. It's just a different situation that should be worked in. Um, yeah, I think moving on to more of a positive note, um, one that you spoke about before on a different podcast, but you recently won an Honor Award for individual impact at client side. Just delving into a bit more of the research side of things, do you want to give an overview of some of the work you did for that award and what helped you build that impact at BT Group?
yeah. So yes, I did win an award, which I can't even believe it yet. It's at the back. I don't know if you can see it. It's right there. I I don't know. I'm really proud of that because it was at the back of trying to do things a bit differently. Because sometimes I feel like, especially client side, we are so set in our ways in how things work and how things are supposed to work or expected to work. And I didn't like that. So at the back of reorg that we had back in, I want to say 2023, maybe. Um, we didn't have the research to do things in the same way. We didn't have the time, the people to go team by team and say, this is what the insights is telling you, this is what your customers want, or this is what is expected. So I took a flip side and I started to go to the managing directors and all of the people that are at top level. And I kind of like took a chance and took a risk of just asking for time, and everyone was open for it. Everyone was really happy about it, and kind of like slowly I started to build this relationship with a stakeholder, which he's now like the commercial CEO of business. And I remember just sneaking into different meetings that I was not supposed to be in because it had nothing to do with insights, and just taking a bunch of notes of questions that were being raised in there. And out of those and the long list that they had, I was tackling the most important ones. That was either because the strategy was changing, or new products were coming, or something was going to be different. Taking those away, coming back 2 months later, asking for time and saying, I don't know if you remember this, but you asked this question 2 months ago. You didn't know what was happening, or a month ago. I went back, I did a piece of research, and this is what you're supposed to do, or this is how you should tackle this. And I managed to build a really good relationship because I kept things on a personal basis. I didn't want to go into those meetings and present a really long deck trying to explain in 60 slides why a decision had to be made. I remember just studying the whole thing, being involved during the whole time, understanding all of my insights, understanding everything, and just sitting down with him and just saying, this is a question that you raise, the results are these. And it was just a conversation, right? And at the back of it, after, a couple of weeks time, or if he had any questions, he will just directly ask me for my opinion, or he will message me and say, I don't know if you have anything on this, but if I make this decision, what do you think? What do you think the market will need on this? Or what do you think? How do you think the customers will react? Do you know if customers are asking for this or asking for that? So from my point of view and the way that I saw that, and the reason why the award was there is because I I think the view that we have on insights and how we have to do a debrief had to change, and had to change because of the change that we had internally and our team changes and all of those things. And I managed to be memorable, and I managed to you know just build a really good relationship with someone that was making the decisions in the business. And just after that, everything just flew, right? Because then you're able to cascade that into different teams, and every time somebody will say something, you'll be like, well, yes, but this is why, or this is why this decision is going to be made, or this is why. And the whole thing just flows in a completely different way, and it's not the normal way that you will take on when you're sitting on client side. So I think you also asked me about the success and why would I recommend to other people. I think because certain ways have been done in a certain or specific way doesn't mean that you can't change them, and it doesn't mean that it has to remain the same way, forever, or it doesn't mean that it's really difficult to change. I think you should try and think about what would be better for you, what would be better for your team, what would be better for your stakeholders, and therefore your customers, right? Because at the end of the day, we're here to try to push the company into be better for the customers and into over different things that will help people, and just position things and thinking about different ways of delivering insights, thinking about different ways of asking the questions in surveys, thinking about different ways about tackling things. Because now you don't even think about studies, you think about, is this worth the investment? Do I have something else that can help with this? So from my point of view, you just need to take a different perspective, just take a step back and take a look at everything from a macro level, and it will work if you trust it, and if you truly think that it would be better, and have your plan there. I think everyone will be open to listen to that.
Yeah, that's a brilliant story of success, and do things a bit differently. I think you touch on something really important there about building the relationship with your stakeholders and decision makers, because the communication and quality of communication really changes, I think, when that happens. Like you mentioned, they can just drop in, and you can have that conversation about little things as well as the big overall strategy. And I think that closing line is a brilliant place to end today's episode. Mayra, thank you so much for joining me today, and those listening at home. I've been your host, Mike Connor. I'll be back next month with another brilliant guest to discover some of the value that they're bringing to their industry and organisation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.